All right, well, I'll keep letting people in, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time for those who got here at noon as advertised. And I want to welcome everyone to our very first of our career panels this week, featuring some awesome alumni who are working in the journalism field. And this is an all-star lineup of all women, as you could see. Our fourth candidate is what I call the cursed position of things keep popping up. It's not really cursed. One of them is interviewing the vice president right now, so I gave him a pass. But I'm very excited that these people are all joining us today and taking time out of their very busy schedules to talk to you all about what they do. And so I'm going, just so you know, this is a very informal conversation that we're going to have. I'm going to ask each of them just to introduce themselves, say a little about what they do and how they got there. Then I'll ask them for just some general advice, and then we'll just open it up to you all so you can ask questions because presumably you want a job after you graduate and you'd like to work at cool places. And so everyone has a job on this panel and they're working at cool places. So I think that's pretty awesome. So I will start it off. We'll just do it alphabetically by last name. And we'll start with Anna. If you want to tell us a bit about you, where you are, and a little of your career journey of how you got there.
Sure. Okay, good. I'm not muted. So I work at the Miami Herald, and I am a state and like a state government and political reporter. I am based in Tallahassee. The Herald has like a really small bureau of reporters who just stay by the state capitol to report during the legislative session and during election and campaign season. And so I cover we're a group of 4. And so we're a joint bureau with the Tampa Bay Times and the Miami Herald, which are the 2 largest papers here in the state. We're a total of 4 reporters, so it's like really tiny. And, I just cover everything during the legislative session. It's all policy driven. What laws are passing. I usually cover education and criminal justice, and as well as keeping an eye on all the things that state agencies are doing in regards to policy. And then once that season ends, campaign season kicks off, and then you're on the campaign trail covering debates, following candidates, not so much anymore. Everything's on Zoom, which is kind of weird. And also just the presidential elections. Florida is a swing state. It's like the nation's largest battleground state. So it gets really busy. We get a lot of attention during presidential races, as we did with Trump, who now lives here. And so it's a very political state, and it's just, it's just weird, a weird state. There's a lot of characters. Miami politicians are very type of characters. So there's always really fun stories to do. And how I got here in a very weird, I don't know, I feel like my career after Sdsu started very, it was very fast. While I was a student there, I started doing internships. First, I went to CHIPS Quinn. It's a scholarship, a scholars program that does internships across the nation. And so they pick students, and they sent me to Trenton, New Jersey to do just like a copy. And then after that, I landed at the San Diego Union Tribune doing, again, cops reporting. And then I went to the Voice of San Diego, where it was more of a broader general assignment kind of beat. And once I had those, I graduated, and I literally applied, I think, everywhere. I think I even applied to Alaska. As it's like, well, whoever will take me. Here I am, I'm ready to work. And I didn't even know what I wanted to cover. I always knew I wanted to cover crime, but I was just, I'll do whatever I have to do. And because I had internships in Trenton and in San Diego covering the cop beat, it just kind of, I landed in that beat as well. And my first job was in Monterey, California, and I worked for the daily paper there. And then a year later, I moved to the weekly paper because they offered me more money. And it was the same type of reporting And from there, I took a sabbatical because I didn't really like the town. And I moved back to San Diego and I started doing freelance work at the border when Trump had just gotten elected. And I started doing a lot of reporting on the Haitian migration issue at the border and started interviewing a lot of these Haitians who were stuck at the border and who were trying to cross. And then from there, one of my connections at one of my internships reached out to me and they said, hey, there's an AP, an Associated Press relief temporary position for covering the legislative session in certain states. Do you want it? And I was like, sure, it's 4 months, I'll do it. I was freelancing, so I didn't really have a commitment. I landed in Florida and I really loved it. And after that, I worked for the USA Today and then the Herald hired me. So it's been really just a lot of movement. And I found that that was the best thing for me most of the times. Like I always viewed it as, you know, big media companies right now will just get rid of you whenever they feel like they need to cut corners for financial reasons. So I'm always going to look out for myself. That was one of the things my mentors first told me. It's like, just always look out for yourself. At the end of the day, it's a job and the media industry is not like the most, you know, economically viable or whatever. So always follow your passion and just kind of like follow the money and take care of yourself, and you'll, you know, just take whatever opportunity you can get and it will just open up so many doors. I mean, I never thought I was going to be living in Florida. And I was like, well, I want to get out of the local beat. I'll try it out for 4 months and see if I like it. Maybe that will open up the door in Sacramento or San Diego, and I'll cover maybe a more important beat than just a court system. And then I ended up staying here. So it was just, I don't know, just kind of random, but I love it. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anna. Let me now swing it over. We started in Florida. We'll head up the coast to New York and let's talk to Meredith.
Hey everyone. And Anna, thank you so much for that. That's oh my gosh, your career sounds incredible. Like what an interesting time to be working as a journalist. Like, oh my goodness. Yeah, just thank you for your work and hope all is well in Florida. I live here in New York, in Brooklyn, but I'm actually from San Diego. I grew up in Chula Vista and went to Sdsu after that. And it was great. I studied journalism and design. So I'm actually now a design lead at The New Yorker. So my team actually designs the website. So I am like, I also have like a sort of scattered way that I got there. I graduated from Sdsu 10 years ago now, which is really crazy to think about. And while I was there, interned at KPBS, which is on campus. They're wonderful. Can't recommend it enough. It was a really fun place to intern. And also Riviera Magazine, which at the time was really, really fun and introduced me to the world of just being able to get things published and publishing and how satisfying that was. I really love writing. I really love reporting. And it has always been something that I've been really passionate about. So I did that through most of school and was actually able to get a lot of clips out of that, which was great. I don't know how the internship world works now, but at the time it was unpaid. I hope that if y'all get internships, you can get some compensation because you should be paid for your work. But I will say that it is really nice to have that sort of head start on work, like while you're still in school and you're interning and you're getting all this work experience. It goes a long way. So after I graduated, I was still working with KPBS. And I also worked at an ad agency as a copywriter for a bit, but I also graduated like in the time where it was like right after the recession and things were really, really shaky. And I was just kind of like, you know, I have some time to travel. I was living at home and I had saved up a lot of money. So I ended up traveling for a year. I was like, you know what? I don't know what I'm going to do and where I'm going to work in the long run. So I'm going to travel. And I freelanced as a journalist while I traveled. I wrote for KPBS and started a blog about traveling, that kind of stuff. After that, I kind of felt invincible. I was like, well, I've lived in all these places. Like, I'm going to try to live in New York. Like, why not? Like, maybe I'll work in journalism. Maybe I'll work in design. I don't know yet. And moved here. And it's an amazing city. The one caveat is that it is so expensive. So when I moved here, I was waitressing. I was doing like front end web development in some dude's basement. And I was interning at a social media agency as a copywriter, and just continued to actually work as a copywriter and a freelance journalist for a few years. I kind of started to realize though that like I really enjoyed design as well. And I was doing it a lot with nonprofits, just sort of to build my portfolio and learn more about it. I've always done web design since I was like a little kid. Like, it's super fun. Like, I feel like we grew up during a time where, you know, you can learn so much online. There's so many resources. Like, a lot of us grew up, I'm probably older than most of you, but I grew up building like GeoCities and like that kind of thing. And it's just always been something that's super interesting to me. So the opportunities in that space started to sound really, really interesting. And I was curious about them. So I transitioned actually from working as a copywriter and journalist into design because I wanted to know what it was all about, and figured I could freelance on the side and actually write things I was excited about. It's really hard working in digital media right now because you do have to just constantly be writing all the time, even about things that you're maybe like not super stoked on. So for me, I was like, well, I think I still love writing, but I really want to just write about the things that I really want to write about and then learn more about this other industry. So I started off working as a designer in the fashion industry, and then I transitioned into the media space once I had that experience. I have my job because of a friend that was in the JMS program with me. And when we lived in San Diego, I helped her get an internship where I used to intern, and we became really good friends when I moved to New York. She ended up working at Condé Nast and worked for Vanity Fair. And she was like, oh, like, we're hiring for designers, like, come interview. And it just was, I mean, I feel so lucky. Like, I really love my job, but it really just shows you that it is so based on connections that you never know how they're going to pay off later on. And, you know, this person is a really good friend of mine. And I've now worked with the New Yorker for 2 years and with Condé Nast for like 3.5. So yeah, it's been a really great time. I still write on the side. I try to like publish. I'm particularly interested in labor rights and personal essays and like that kind of stuff. And it's really inspiring working with such amazing writers. But in the design space, there's also like a unique set of challenges working for something like the New Yorker. It's like, what is the future revenue model of journalism? Like, that is such an open question right now. Like, making money, you know, is so different than it was 5 years ago for publications. So that is like one of the biggest problems we're trying to solve. You know, it is like, when you think of design, you think of how things look, but that's really just part of my job. A lot of it is like, what's going to be a better reading experience? Like, you know, how are we going to drive more people to certain parts of our site? What is the subscription model going to look like? You know, what are some additional products we can incorporate into our portfolio? So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I feel really honored. I was excited to get an email about this. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you have about transitioning into a different space as well, because I love writing, I love journalism. I have like such a deep respect for it. For me, it's still part of my life, but it's also part of my life in a different way. So yeah, that's my story.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Meredith. All right, over to Adriana.
Hi. Wow. Well, that's very inspiring for both of you. I've managed to stay local, so to hear people's adventures, you know, with other jobs and whatnot, I'm always excited to hear about those. But just a little bit about myself. I'm also from San Diego. I grew up in Chula Vista too. I was a transfer student at San Diego State, so I first went to Southwestern College, community college in South Bay. And I was part of the newspaper there. I did online and video stuff. And then when I transferred to Sdsu, I joined the Daily Aztec, and I started doing video for them as well. I got attracted to video because I'm not the best with words. You know, I admit that right off the top. I'm very much a visual learner. And I always just wanted to explore that side of journalism. And I wanted, the daily aspect to become more robust with multimedia. So I was experimenting how we could do that. But at that time when I was there, it was just me. So a lot of it was just trying to figure out as we went along. So yeah, I did that for 2 years. My senior year at San Diego State, I was reached out by a local reporter at Voice of San Diego. His name is Mario Karan. He covered education, and I reached out to him on Twitter. I basically just sent him a tweet saying, I really liked your last story. And I didn't think much of it. And then later on, he DM'd me and asked if, I wanted to meet up to talk about bilingual education, because I had put that on my Twitter bio, I guess. And so, yeah, we just met up, and he was telling me about a project that he was working on, and if I would like to help. And, I wasn't going to get paid or anything. It wasn't like a formal internship, but I was just so passionate about the work that he was doing and excited just to learn more, that I was like, yeah, it's the summer. I don't mind at all. So I began working with him, and eventually, he had spoken to his boss about possibly getting me an internship there. And for my spring semester, I ended up interning at Voice of San Diego. It was during a time where they were doing a lot of transitions at that moment. And so once my internship was over, I, went into my boss's office and was just wondering if I could get it extended into the summer, because I still didn't know what I was going to do, where I was going to work. And I wanted the summer to figure it out. And he just said, well, I'm hiring you full time. So, I guess it worked out. And so, yeah, that was summer 2017. And I've been at Voice since then. I do video stuff, photos. Photojournalism has become a big part of my job as well. I do some design, graphics, and animation too. So a lot of basically what a multimedia journalist is, just a lot of different stuff, which I enjoy a lot, because I like figuring out ways that we can make our stories more accessible to people that may not understand everything that may be written. Because that's the way that I grew up, because I didn't necessarily understand everything that I was reading at school, and I always depended on visuals. And I know that that's something that a lot of people depend on as well. And I think that's a very important job if you want people to be more engaged in civics, local civics, and with, their community as well. So yeah, now I'm at that stage where we're working on expanding that effort, our civics academy, mission of Voice of San Diego. So we have done a series called San Diego 101, and that's basically explaining some of how the region works. And I'm very passionate about that, because it's starting off as videos, but we're expanding it even more. And I think it's just important to try to make, all these complex issues that we cover, which is very important, to try to make them accessible to everyone, especially the people that it might be affecting the most. So right now I'm just in that very creative space. I love working at Voice because there is a lot of creative freedom. We are local. And so I get to try a lot of different things. There are some things that I've done before that I cannot look anymore because I don't like the way they look. But, it's a growing process. And I guess if I could give you guys any advice, is that I would just try it all, and like Meredith was saying, there's so much that you can learn online. Like I went to San Diego State and I got a degree at San Diego State, but I also went to YouTube Tutorial University, and I got several degrees there on animating and stuff. And so I'm joking, it's not an actual degree, but what I'm saying is that there's a lot of information online that you can teach yourself and sort of experiment with. And if I hadn't done that, I don't think I would be where I'm at right now. And I'm happy to be a Voice. I don't see myself leaving or trying to find somewhere else. But if I ever do get to that point, I do know that I've gone to the point where I can just really expand every aspect of being creative and being a visual journalist.
Thank you so much, Adriana. So let's quickly go around one more time. You've all sort of given some advice, but if you're thinking about your career or any of the lessons you've learned along the way, what are some of the things you've learned, or what's some advice for the students who are coming out, who are journalism majors now, that you might give based on your own experiences and observations? And then all the students start thinking of questions, because we'll have lots of time where we can just have a conversation. So we'll start back with you, Anna.
And apology if the gardener is here, so my dog barks. She's going really crazy right now, so apologies. Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I also worked at Daily Aztec. I think I started there my second year, and I started as a volunteer writer. I don't know if they pay all writers now or not. And then I kind of moved up the ranks year by year. Then I was assistant news editor and then the managing editor. But I wish I would have kind of experimented with all the beats, even photography. So, because that was the thing that helped me the most, both in classes when I started taking multimedia, and then in the job market, like just diversifying your skill set, because everyone can do everything now, it seems like. So just being able to help in your newsroom in any way possible. Speaking from experience, like I've only worked, even if they're major dailies, they're always really tiny little bureaus or newsrooms. And they kind of need, in order to get the stories out to readers, you often have to have a pretty wide skill set. Even if it's not like you're the best at everything, just know how to do a little bit of everything, and that will make you so competitive in the market, or more desirable in the market. And yeah, don't be picky. I don't know, I guess that was my number one thing. I was like a yes man, a yes woman during my entire, I graduated from Sdsu in 2014, and for 3 years before graduation, I just remember saying yes to everything. I think I even freelanced for patch.com when it was still a thing. I don't know, it's still a thing, but I just was blogging. I was using it, like all social media. I was just freelancing, whoever would take me. And some, like now I cringe at some things that are out there, but it just kind of opened a lot of doors. And like Meredith was saying, like, you never know who you're going to cross your paths with again. And having said yes to all these things allowed me to meet so many people in the industry. And eventually that's how I landed in Florida to work for the Associated Press, which I thought was like such a big deal back then. Even if it was like 4 months, it was because one guy who taught me how to do videos in an internship program liked me. He's like, oh, she's kind of good. Maybe she'll want to take that job. And I immediately said yes. I was like, yes, I'll take it. And, sometimes it's not as easy because you have to uproot your life a lot. And it's not only scary, but it's also financially draining. I did not make a lot of money. For the longest time, and I put a lot of things, like for me to move to Florida for the 4 months, I kind of put a lot of things in my credit cards to be able to, move and travel, and just the flights, because they didn't pay for my flights here. So it's just kind of taking that jump to the plunge to, like, if you really want to do it, maybe don't go crazy with the finances, right? And always look to get the best pay you can get. But sometimes when you're starting out, it kind of just take a little risk if that's really what you want to do, and just say yes to everything. And then eventually you'll cross paths maybe in 10 years, and then they'll give you a job. That's your dream job.
Awesome. Thank you. Meredith, you want to add your thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely, to all of that. Like, I have a few thoughts. I think the first one that comes to mind, just to go off of what Anna's saying, is like, I think you should also, like, right out of college, kind of accept that things are going to feel weird. Like, you might not have like the thing you want the most or anything like that. That takes so long to achieve. And maybe you'll get really lucky, but it is the people that you meet along the way that will guide you towards something you're really excited about. Not to be a downer, it's not a bad thing. It's just that, like, it takes a while and it takes a lot of like commitment to trying different things and figuring those out, like, until you can sort of find your path. And even then that path could change. You know, I don't know if I'll be doing my job forever. I might do something else in 10 more years. But on that note, to work in the journalism industry or just in general to, like, you know, have a really strong point of view and background on things, I would really recommend interning. Like, interning is amazing. Like, definitely work for the on-campus resources available for you, like the Daily Aztec. Any other things that you can learn and pick up and grow on there would be great. Especially now that everything's remote, I feel like something like an internship or freelancing or something like that is more accessible than it has been before, because you don't have to be in an office. But again, I'm really big on labor rights. So if you do intern, please make sure that, like, it's hopefully paid, even like a very low rate, or something. Like, I personally, my internships were unpaid, but I lived at home with my family, so it wasn't a big deal. Not everyone has that luxury. So if you are taking internships, just, like, please, like, advocate for yourself as much as you can. I know that you're still figuring it out and you probably feel really excited and lucky to be, like, working for places and learning, but also just know that, like, you are working for a company or a person, and you do deserve to be compensated for whatever that means. However, like, that work really does open doors. You meet people, you have things online, you look really legitimate, you learn so much. Like, I had no idea what I was doing at my first couple of jobs, still have no idea, I'm figuring it out. But like, you just learn exponentially. So intern, if you can afford to do so. You know, especially now. And on that note, do not be afraid to reach out to people, like, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, etc. Like, if there's a place you really want to work or you're really curious about, please don't be afraid, even if it's like the New York Times or something, to, like, look up somebody on LinkedIn or Twitter and email them, like, email their personal email if they have it listed, or email their work email, or tweet at them, because people are not afraid to help, really. Like, if I get emails from students, like, I'm more than willing to, like, just now do Zoom, but before, like, get coffee and talk to people and help people. Or if I'm not able to time-wise, like, you know, point them in the right direction. And like, you would be really surprised. Like, I would say, don't be daunted, you know, by feeling like, oh, I'm a student, so, like, I don't know. Like, people are really willing to help out, especially because they were in your shoes at one point in time. So don't be afraid to do that. And that also goes for, like, looking for an internship or a job. If you know someone who works there, like, don't be afraid to reach out to them. Like, my job now, it was like, oh, I want to leave the fashion industry and get into the media industry. I have a good friend in New York that I know from San Diego State that works at this place I want to work. Like, you know, hey, are you guys hiring? Like, that is how things happen. Like, even now we're hiring a few designers on our team. And the first thing that, like, you know, my boss asked is, like, do you know anyone? Like, do you know anyone who'd be interested? It's not like, oh, let's post this online and look through these candidates. Like, the first, like, I don't remember the statistic, but a lot of jobs are not advertised because they're filled internally. Like, there's, like, this invisible job market that gets filled because, like, it is about, like, you know, someone already working there who's good at their job and being trusted to hire, and then being like, oh, well, I know like 5 people, or like reaching out to a friend who's like, do you know someone, before it goes out into the greater world. So don't be afraid to, like, reach out to people, you know, if you are looking for a job or an internship, and be like, is this something you guys are thinking of? Or, like, if it's not now, maybe 6 months from now, because they can definitely, like, think of you and get back to you. And then the third thing is like, if you are interested in transitioning out of journalism and using those skills to do something else, like design or working in tech or working in some other industry, your skills are applicable everywhere. The main thing to do is to just remember, like, research what that entails for that industry. And if you do need to take additional coursework, do that. But, like, more than anything, again, like, everything is so accessible now. Just, like, spin up some of your own stuff on, like, in your free time, if you're lucky enough to have it, and create examples of those things. Like, you know, way I got my first design job was volunteering with a few nonprofits and like designing their websites and using that work to like, you know, get forward in that regard. So don't be afraid to keep learning. Don't be afraid to just like be self-initiated on like your own time if you have that luxury, because again, it's a luxury. And don't be afraid to use that work to, you know, get another job or try out a different industry or reach out to people in that industry and learn more about it. Like, don't feel limited by studying journalism to just working in the journalism industry. I'm very committed to it. I love this industry, but you know, I don't know if I'll be doing this forever. Maybe I'll transition elsewhere. I don't know yet. So yeah, just like know that your skills are really applicable in a lot of places and you can always learn more.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Adriana.
Yeah, second and third, that both of what they're saying. I think if you see like an overall theme in this is that try it all, you know, don't limit yourself. And I think that's very important, because I think when we're in college, we have this vision that of ourselves, like where we want to be. And that's great, you know, to have that sort of expectation and to have something to aim for. But it's good to open yourself up to different possibilities. Like I wanted to do TV news producing when I first got into journalism, and I'm not doing that at all, you know, but that's because I tried different things and I opened the doors to different opportunities. And I'm very happy with what I do now. And I don't think I would be here if I just told myself, no, TV news, I'm only applying for TV news producers. Like that's the only thing I'm doing, you know. I think any aspect in journalism, anything that you do decide to go for, like any job is, like Meredith said, you're going to have skills that you can bring with you to wherever you go. And, you know, right now, obviously, like a lot of you are trying to apply for jobs and like, you're probably still, you know, don't have any idea what's going to happen. And I think that's totally okay. You know, I remember some people were like, oh, if you wait more than 6 months, then panic. Like that's when you panic. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I got a job right off of college, but I do know of friends who struggled to find jobs for like a year or two. And, you know, they did other stuff, but they were still dedicated to finding a job in journalism. And that ended up doing that. Like one of our reporters, Kayla, she worked for a marketing as a marketing assistant somewhere. I forgot the exact, I think it was for like a fitness company. She did that for like a year, but she was still looking for journalism jobs. And now she's one of our main reporters, and she does a lot of sexual assault reporting that's very important to the community. Another friend of mine, Cami, who's also a JMS graduate, she also struggled for like a little bit. And after a year, she got a job with the LA Times. So, I mean, I think you have to do what's best for you. So if you do find like a job within like 6 months or like a year, that's not necessarily what you want to do. It might not be in journalism. I would say take it, but don't give up. You know, the door's still open and there's still ways that you can get into the journalism field. And once you do find a job, I think it's important to realize that for a lot of people, you know, especially if you're someone of color, in an industry that's, you know, predominantly white, you know, in a newsroom that may be predominantly white, I still get a lot of imposter syndrome. I'm 4 years into my career, and I still, like, sometimes I'm like, I don't deserve this, you know, I don't deserve to be here. Like, there's so many other people that are talented, and like so many other people with different experiences, like, why me? And it becomes like an existential crisis. But I do think it's important to realize that you do bring value into the newsroom that you go into the job that you go into. And it is a muscle that you have to keep telling yourself every day, like, no, I'm here for a reason. And like, what I bring is valuable. You know, and I think that's something that you're going to face, that a lot of times, a lot of people don't say, like, I didn't know that was going to happen to me, but I do see it more and more often with other people that I talk to around my age or just straight out of college. And yeah, I mean, I think just acknowledging it and trying to find support for it. And that's not to say like you're alone or anything, like it happens a lot. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'd like to open it up to anyone here to ask questions. You should have the ability to unmute yourself. So you could actually just do that. If you have a question, you can put them in the chat if you prefer to go that route. But I'd love to let you all have an opportunity to ask any of the questions that are on your minds.
I have a quick question for all three of y'all. Noticing that identity is very specific right now in this socio-political atmosphere, particularly being minority, being female, and the constant kind of attack on journalism just in general by certain areas of the government and players in there. What advice do you have for students who may identify at different intersections of traditionally marginalized identities in the journalism field that are getting ready to go out into this socio-political world out there?
I can take it. If working in Florida has been really difficult. Am I unmuted? Okay. So Florida is, purple state. So there's pretty much half and half with Republicans and Democrats, and there's a good chunk of independents. But Republicans have been pretty much following the suit of Trump and attacking the media just nonstop. And so every day, every meeting that I cover, there's this there's just kind of this anger toward the press, no matter who you are. I grew up in Tijuana, so they pushed a lot of, for example, the sanctuary cities bill passed here my first year here. Then there was the E-Verify requirement, so foreigners wouldn't get the jobs here. And then there was like the Black Lives Matter protests, and I know that my colleagues who are Black have had, they had to take like mental health days. Like it was a toll on them during the summer. So it is, if you are looking into getting into state government reporting and political reporting, just know that, and it's kind of like a reality. And my advice would be just to always set boundaries with your work. Like know when you need time off, know when you just talk to your editors, talk to your colleagues. Everyone's going through the same thing, and it's a really tough time right now to be a journalist. Like you're not liked. I mean, at least, I don't know how it is in California right now or New York, but in Florida, I mean, it just feels like we're like the scum, right, of the earth here, at least by how our politicians treat us. And it's the people that you're interacting with every day. So it does become like a bit of a toxic environment. So just know how to put yourself first, your mental health first, because it can take a toll, and you can just get really the burden, and you can just get burned out really quickly, is all I'm saying. And just prepare yourself and just set boundaries and know that it comes from a place of power, right? I mean, they're saying those things most of the time to pander to their base or to pander to a specific audience. Don't take it personally, even if it hurts, because sometimes it's not directed at you. It's just they're trying to gain more power, and just kind of keep that in mind as you cover these things on a daily basis, because it can take a toll.
Do either Adriana or Meredith have any? I want to.
Yeah, I'll let Adriana weigh in first. I know you get to think too.
Yeah, I think it's important to find your people in the journalism world, people that will support you. I'm involved with NHJ, the local chapter, and a lot of, sometimes I go to them to support when, things happen in my own newsroom. My newsroom is predominantly white, and so sometimes there's people that I can't express, certain things with them. So I go to, my NHJ local chapter, and I just sometimes just sit there and talk to them about some of the things I'm experiencing in the workplace. And I also have people in work too, I'd voice that, we've kind of come together and just sort of been open about sharing some of the things that we're experiencing, because a lot of it happens and, you might not acknowledge it, it might not be something that we want to talk about out loud or in front of everyone, but it's important to still let it out in some capacity, like Anna said, to take care of your mental health. And I think, and if you don't have the spaces to do that, I think it's always important to, you can speak out online. I've seen a lot of people start talking about diversity and equity more online, and to speak about it to your newsroom too. If you are in a newsroom that is predominantly white, a lot of the times, a lot of the issues that you may be facing are not necessarily, people are not aware of that, and the first thing to do is to educate and make them aware of it. Granted, it shouldn't be all on you to do that, but I think that's important. And I think at the end of the day, it's also important that, yes, we are passionate about journalism and passionate about who we are, but we also have to remember that this is a job too, and it doesn't have to suck the life out of us, or it doesn't have to follow us after we're done, after we clock out or anything. And it's good to find joy in other things outside of work. I would always just take pride in saying, oh, I work for fun, like when I'm not working, I don't know what to do. I don't have any hobbies. And now that's become a real problem, because when I'm not working, all I think about is work. And so I think it's important to find joy in other things.
Yeah, absolutely, to all of that. And I definitely recommend so it's interesting because Condé Nast was at the center of all this racial, it has been for the past 6 months. There's always some, or year, there's always some new thing that comes up. And I mean, it's only because people now feel comfortable talking about it. It's always been there. And it's actually really hard for me to work for a company that continues to perpetuate some really terrible things, in the workplace. And I'm lucky enough to be working on a team of designers that we do prioritize diversity in hiring, and we don't want a homogenous team, because we think that the more diverse voices and people we have on our team, the better, the more points of view we get. As someone who's white, I would say to just be aware of the fact that other people are going through something you probably don't even know about, and be really open to listening when somebody wants to talk to you, and try to be aware of implicit biases that you might have in that regard. As someone that's a woman and has that identity, it's challenging working in design, because it is an industry where 90% of students are actually women. Or sorry, I think it's 60% or 70%, but 90% of creative directors and design directors are men. And I'd imagine it's quite similar in journalism as well. And that is really challenging for me personally, because I would love to do that one day. And I think personally, what I try to do is just advocate for myself and have a lot of self-compassion, and just sort of if you are experiencing microaggressions and just sort of a hostile environment based on your identity, have compassion for yourself first, because it is hard. It is not oh, I have to work and my job environment is a little toxic and that sucks. No, it's freaking hard, and it shouldn't be like that. If you're in a position of power, even based on your privilege or based on your role within the company, please speak up about this kind of stuff. And additionally, if you work for a big corporation like I do, I mean, I have colleagues that are not afraid to hold really high up people accountable, and whether it's a town hall or something like that, and give a voice to people that maybe don't feel as comfortable speaking up. If you feel like speaking up, speak up. But as this advice is for new graduates, I would say going on interviews, if you feel comfortable, ask about this kind of stuff in interviews. Ask about race, ask about gender identity, I mean, I don't know, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. I know it's a job and it's exciting, but you also want to be happy there. So don't be afraid to ask about these kinds of things up front. You might make your interviewer a little uncomfortable, but hopefully not. So I don't know, that's kind of like a grab bag of advice that's a little all over the place, but I think ultimately just like be sure to check in with yourself and how you're feeling, and be sure to advocate for yourself as well. And also just, you know, if you are in a position of power or privilege, please acknowledge these things exist and that others might have a very different experience than you have. And maybe you got to where you are because of so many other factors. So yeah, that's it from me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Nate, for that great question. We've got one question in the chat. How do you all recommend networking within the media world while online? Any specific advice for that?
I mean, I think in the journalism industry, like Twitter is key. And sometimes, you know, I get annoyed with it, but, you know, it's also a benefit to it as well. And I think I remember when I was in college, you know, the big sort of thing was like have an online, like make sure you're very professional online and make sure that, you know, you're not posting anything, like just, you know, your future employers would see it. And I feel like that necessarily limits you. I feel like it's important to show your personality, to show your opinions on certain things. I know a local reporter, who used to be a local reporter at UCSD, he was with the student newspaper there. He started to be more outspoken online about diversity and equity, and just in general about the stories that he was covering. And after college, you know, like he started to get more attention, and now, you know, he's like a big, I would say he's like one of the upcoming media figures. I don't know if you guys know Gabe Schneider, but he's become one of the people that a lot of journalists of colors now depend on to support and speak out about some of the things that are happening. And so I think that's a good example, as, you know, you shouldn't limit yourself. You should try to like respond back to people online, try to be active with them. If you like someone's story, reach out to them and say so. You know, journalists love to talk about themselves. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's important to just don't be afraid to show who you really are online.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think also on that note, like if you have any ideas for stories or projects, like that kind of thing, just do them. Like, you know, post them, like write them and publish them somewhere, like on your own means, or like, I don't know, what have you, and you can have that as some sort of sample. But I, like, for example, I had a blog about waiters here in New York, and I was interviewing them. I just thought it was really interesting, and I posted it on my Instagram, and one of my friends worked for Refinery 29, and I started doing a series for them on like workers and like people who worked. So like the more of your own material you have to sort of show, the better. In terms of like something that's specific to networking, like Twitter's awesome. You know, like building your own brand online and having that voice is really awesome as well. And again, like, don't be afraid to be like, oh, I've always wanted to work at this place. I'm going to go on LinkedIn and look up people who work there. A lot of, I don't know how true this is for journalists. A lot of people, at least in the design industry, don't really like check LinkedIn that often, but they do have a profile because that's how people can find them. So what I've done in the past is I've like looked someone up and I've been like, oh my gosh, they seem amazing. I would love to know more about their career. I would love to work there. You can typically Google them and like find their email address or something like that, and just send a really nice email. Again, like, people love to talk about themselves. It's always really flattering to get messages like that. And you'd be surprised how many people get back to you and want to talk to you more. I think when I was in college, I was like, ooh, like networking, like, oh my gosh, I have to like act a certain way and meet certain people. And like, it's like this whole thing. And like, it's really just like becoming friends with people or learning more about people. And like, the more you get to know someone or the more interested you are in what they do, the more that you end up just meeting more people like that. So yeah, I would say there's not necessarily like a weird science behind it. It sucks right now because we can't do anything in person. So it's like, at the same time, it's cool because everything's remote, so you have access to a lot of people you wouldn't. But yeah, don't be afraid to like reach out to people that interest you. Don't be afraid to spread your net wide, and also don't be afraid to like build your own thing. You know, if you have the tools to do so, to sort of use as a calling card.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Twitter has definitely expanded possibilities in terms of interacting with people online and make your name known a little bit and start branding, I guess. But there's so many programs too where you can look up mentors, and I've participated in a few of those. Some started individually in different parts of the state. We have one here in Florida where students literally just email you and ask for just 10 minutes of your time, and then they bounce off ideas off of you. And so you can start doing your specific industry, whether you want to go into print or online or design or TV, whatever it is. Maybe start looking for people, and again, just send an email. And my recommendation is everyone's so willing to talk. They just maybe don't have that much time. So when you make that offer, be like, I don't have much of your time. I just wanted to get some ideas from you. And if people know that it might not be, like an hour long conversation, they'll be like, oh yeah, like let's hop on the phone right now or this afternoon. And it can just speed up that process of starting to meet more people. I've done it a few times, and it's just, again, like making friends. Like you just like bounce off ideas, and it's really informal. And I would recommend that too. Just keep it informal. We were just people, like don't make us feel so old. And we love to just talk and bounce off ideas. I've given some students like story ideas for their own newspapers. When they started, they're like, I don't even know how to cover the legislature. It's like, oh, well, I do this. Look, and I'll send them like all the things that I look at, and just look at maybe specific to your area of interest, and then start finding people. And if someone doesn't respond, maybe they're busy, and send them back another note. And they're not ignoring you. They're probably just overwhelmed with work.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We've got just a few minutes left. If there's anybody with one more, we probably have time for one more question before we wrap up. This has been such great advice. I've really enjoyed just listening to you all share your experiences. Yes, Dr. K, thank you for the heart. Any other questions? Eunice, you were... Okay, somebody unmuted.
I'm a little bit of an older student coming back into community college after getting laid off over the COVID pandemic, and coming back to college with a better understanding of what I want to do, and it's journalism. But I was curious if you guys had any suggestion about the sort of journalism that could be the most impactful, and what you guys view to be some of the more important ways to just make an impact and help the world, the most beneficial public service journalism going forward.
Yes, anyone would like to try that one?
Sure, I'll try it. Oh, man. So going back to what I was talking about, how politically divisive the world is right now. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I find utility stories, not like the where to go, like what do I do if I lose my vaccination card? Not so much that, but more of the like really diving into policy and explaining it to like the general audience. It's like, hey, here's how this matters to you, right? I mean, we have, right, for example, we have like an election story bill right now, and it's getting a lot of controversy. It's similar to the one in Georgia. And rather than slapping like this very hyperbolic, or not hyperbolic, but just finding the one provision that is the most eye-catching one and just running with it, even though maybe we'll get more readers, maybe try to do a little bit extra work and be like, okay, here is how many people voted by mail in the state or in my county, and this is how many people will be impacted by this one specific change, and this is what you need to do in order for your vote to matter. And, you know, like just finding the utility in your community and informing people as to like exactly why this matters. Because if we do the easy story, I feel like sometimes we're just going to fuel to that division. And, you know, sometimes even if it's right, it's almost just like the fast way of getting clicks. And just go the extra step and do more homework and make it tailored to your community specifically. And people will find it so useful, and maybe there'll be more outrage because they'll be like, hey, hold on a second, I couldn't vote in person because I had underlying conditions and I needed to vote by mail, and now they want to limit my vote by mail. So just making it more individualistic, I think that's the best way of going about things. And again, I think I'm coming from the perspective of I live in a very divided state, and I've seen what works with audiences. And I oftentimes, when I do the quick story, I will only get one side reading it and the other side just hating on it. And then you don't really accomplish much other than reaffirming certain positions. And then the person who would really be impacted, they don't even know how that policy is going to hurt them or benefit them. So just going that extra step.
Yeah, co-sign to, oh, sorry, Adriana, I'll just say this real quick, co-sign to that. I think the New York Times does a really good job at like breaking down really complex issues and making them into really simple to understand like responses. And just think about like the things that you would want to know when you hear about something that seems like it's really out, like a coronavirus response, or like how are we doing on vaccinations in the country, and a way to break that down conversationally. Like I just think like in terms of doing journalism as a public service, like stuff like that is the best way forward in terms of like breaking down something really complex into something really easy to understand, that's been rigorously fact checked as well. Because there is so much false information out there. Like it's good to know you can go somewhere to read something very concise and clear that'll answer your questions.
Yeah, I think on that, I think, you know, it's very important to provide context. I think media literacy is something that we definitely need to work on, you know, as people that work in the industry, is how do we make our work accessible, and how do we make it and that's something that people can actually use, that people understand, right? Rather than just like a headline or something that may, you know, be misconstrued. Like how do we actually explain the news? So I feel like if you can bring that into your reporting, then that's something very special. And I feel like that's something that a lot of newsrooms want and crave more of. You know, being able to explain things is a skill of its own. So if there's any way that you can find that in your reporting, I think that's super important. And, you know, I think local reporting, and, you know, I work at a local newsroom, I think that's very, very much important, because those are areas that are generally not being covered, right? And those are people that might not get, you know, that might be impacted by like the big policy changes that we're not necessarily giving attention to. And so I think honing into a specific community, I think is important, and trying to tell a story from their perspective is very much important as well. So just try, like if you do see like a news story out there, you know, like if there's something that is happening that's big, I would say ask yourself, how can I report this in a different way? How can I make this better, rather than just doing what everyone else is already doing? Like what parts need more reporting? That's something that we do at Voice. We're like a daily news organization, but we focus on investigations. And so we don't cover the fires or like, you know, things that happen day by day. We try to look at the bigger picture and really analyze that and see how is it going to really affect the community and bring some context to that. That's something, if you were at any newsroom that you work on, is very valuable.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for those great answers and for being here today. For all the students in particular who are wanting to know how to network, here are 3 people who all dropped in their emails. You can find them online. You know, prior to a month or so ago, I didn't know any of these people. I just reached out and they were all more than happy to jump on this experience today. So that's, if you know, remember nothing else, remember that you can reach out, you can make connections, and people will talk, and that's how you're going to build your network. And you never know when that's going to come through and get that job for you. So thank you, Meredith, Adriana, Anna, so much for joining us today, coming back virtually to Sdsu. We really appreciate you taking out the time of your days. So valuable for us to hear from you. So thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. This is great.
Absolutely. And have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.